another interview with Music Talk. I am here with a singer, bass player, musician, Paul Greenlease. How you doing today?
I'm good, Rob. How you doing?
You're pretty awesome.
Good.
I do look pretty interviewee with this clipboard, don't I?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Looks like very official.
Yes, very official with my rope sandals. So you're a musician here in Kansas City. You started gigging pretty young, right?
Yeah, I was 19.
Yeah. What was that like gigging so young? Were there any like challenges being so young?
There was questions about like could I be in the bar not being 21.
Yeah.
But that was so long ago. I mean, you can unless you were really acting up, nobody would ever even card you anyway at a bar.
Yeah.
You could be like, you could be like 12 and wearing a six gun and order a shot of whiskey probably. I don't not that much, but you know what I mean. So there were some questions about that, but it didn't come up that much.
Yeah. Were there any like? Did you ever have to feel that you had to like extra prove yourself because of the youngness, like with the band, like with your bandmates and stuff, or?
There was certain earlier on there was certain opportunities I was given that I was very grateful for, but I wasn't even sure I was ready for.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so for that reason I had to really prove myself.
It feels weird because I bet because I'm not super young, but I still feel kind of young where I feel like I got some talent, but I do feel like I kind of need to prove myself. But then again, I know that I do and I should feel kind of grateful for all this stuff too. There's that weird that weird emotion happening where you're trying to be grateful, but you're also trying to show that you feel like you deserve to be there.
Like that you're of merit. That you're meritorious.
Yeah. So the way I met you was through Dave Hayes and the Open Jam, right? You guys run a couple open jams in town, and first of all, tell everybody what the heck is an open jam?
An open jam is it's a place for musicians to get up and play with other musicians. It's great networking. You meet other people there, and that actually helped me get established in Kansas City. And because I had played starting at age 19, played professional gigs. But when I was 23, I went to Musicians Institute in Los Angeles, and then when I came back, I was 24, and I needed to go meet some people, And I was, I'm from north of the river. Heck, I was afraid to even go south of the river. You know what I mean? And so, of course, a year and a half living in Hollywood, I was over being afraid of going anywhere. But the deal was that I needed to go meet people, get myself out there, and a lot of that is really, it's a lot of trudging. You know what I mean? You might have to wait a long time to get up. You might not get to get up with the best guys because nobody knows you. But sooner or later, people start, putting two and two together that, oh, he's a nice guy, or they're a nice person, they can play, and they're almost, they're kind of like job interviews almost, but they're more casual, and there's drinking involved.
Usually. Yeah, and there's drinking involved.
Which is, why you should never go to a company Christmas party, and drink, don't do it, man. They're looking, the tapes are rolling.
They're looking.
But and even after I got established, it's still, I've still found a good thing to go to open jams, just to get out there, let people know you're there, remind them that you're there. If you're out of sight, out of mind, your phone's not going to ring. And also, Dave Hayes and I do so many jams with Danny Montero, Dave and Danny and me do so many jams together that so many people come out to our jams that we can't even. They're good enough players. We can't believe they're there. You know what I mean? I mean, we're just like, man, and we're really blessed with that. But for me, when I go out to a jam today, it is networking, but also it's an opportunity to pay back people that come to my jams, to our jams so many times.
Yeah, that's really nice. I mean, that's a good attitude to have. I mean, and you made an interesting point that, so first of all, like, the logistics of it are kind of funny because a lot of people can't understand how we even do this. Like,
Yeah.
right? So you guys are what's called the house band, right? And the house band is just the you basically run the jam. And so it's you three guys, you do your set of songs yourself, but then like bass and drums would get off, bass and drummer get on there maybe with another guitar player. So you're playing those two are now playing with Dave. Then like bass, two guitars get, so that's like 3 songs. Bass, guitar, 2 guitars get off. Drummer stays there or something. 3 more guys get on, and now it's that concoction.
Yeah.
Then they get off, and then it's just crazy how that's what's so fun about it is you get to play with so many different people every time, right?
That is a great thing, and I've come from an era, just a very tail end of an era where you could play 5 or 6 nights a week at the same place with the same band, and that was good in a way, but also it was really bad because you really got to missing playing with other people. And when we host the jams, we get to play with a bunch of other people. It keeps us loose and fresh. We learn ideas from younger guys that are coming up, older players too. That and it just keeps us fresh and it's creative. And every jam is a different thing. It depends on the venue where you're at. And even for us, depending on where we're at, it depends on how we run the jam. Sometimes a band will play just a few songs and then just get it up, and you don't even see those guys again. Usually with the Dave Hayes band, we have a lot of people that come to see us,
Right.
and they want to see the jammers,
Right,
but they want to see me and Dave and Danny, and which is very
Playing really
cool.
good and we're really well. They come to see you too.
Yeah, and it's because it's a jam, it also extends to just the host band because we really do it. We take a lot of liberties that we probably can't do in other bands. We can just like go places.
That's cool.
And it's appreciated and it works out well and it's super fun and it kind of recharges my batteries creatively. But different bands and different places do things differently. Sometimes it'll be just a few songs, get people up. We usually do a full set, and then a lot of times, depending on the venue, we'll either take a break or in lieu of taking a break, we'll start getting guys like you up. We've done that several times. We get you up during our set at a certain juncture.
Which I appreciate.
Well, it's fun for us. It makes it look like we know cool people, Rob. Okay, that's it's a double-edged sword there. Okay, but in lieu of taking a break, we'll get some like guys that are really good up with us, augment the band, and then go straight from that to other jammers. There's no downtime that way. And the people that come to our jams know that if we're getting guys up and our sets running along, we're not going to take any kind of break and have any downtime. They're getting right up after us. And the idea is we want people that come out to our jams to have a good time, feel like they're treated well, and also we want them to have an opportunity to grow as musicians, and we'll get people up that, at first they're really reticent and they're really kind of scared and stuff. But this, Rob, playing music is like playing pool, If you're playing pool like with, your nephew or something like that, you're probably not going to play that well, right? You play at a certain level. If you're playing pool with, somebody that's like a professional pool player, does tournaments and stuff like that.
It's different.
You're seeing angles, you're making shots that you wouldn't have never even thought you could have made. And playing music is like that.
Agree with that.
So we'll get these sometimes less experienced players up there that are kind of jittery, if they're on guitar, Dave will be on the other guitar. And it's hard to find anybody that lays it down more solid than Dave does. You know what I mean? And so, put them up with a good rhythm section and Dave, and they're playing stuff they didn't even know they could play. You know what I mean? And then eventually, so you get them in their comfort zone, and eventually you start expanding their comfort zone. Like maybe here's your comfort zone. Now we're going to throw something at you you're not that comfortable with. And the next week, okay, your comfort zone's all the way out here. We're going to throw you something else, and it just keeps getting better and better. To all of a sudden they've got a lexicon of music.
So. And you made a really good point that I definitely have to admit two things. One, if I had a choice, I would want to get up with you guys every time, with your house band, because I mean, there's just, we can start to whip and post, and there's other songs we can do, but also that, like you just said, I mean, you guys are doing stuff that I can catch fast, and so it's just more fun to play with really good musicians, at least in my opinion. And you said something interesting too, is that even though this is for like up and comers a little bit, there is a huge, I mean, the open jams are actually really a big part of our music scene here. I can't speak for other cities, but in this city, I mean, you'd probably agree that it's a huge part, and it's not just I've been to 5 open jams and I'm trying to get myself out there. It's people that go all the time, right? Professionals that still come out, and that's really cool, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, for so long I've been like, like I'll be at home and I'm like, man, I'm just dying to go to a jam, and because they are fun, and you get to fellowship. There's a fellowship. You get to fellowship with other musicians. That's the biggest part of it. And that's the biggest part of the open jams is the fellowshipping with other musicians. I felt that, like, for me, it wasn't necessary. I mean, there's obviously certain like chops with different genres that you need to eventually start getting, but for me, like, from playing so early age, when I got to Kansas City about 7 years ago and I started to go to these jams, for me anyways, it wasn't so much of a learning curve with like doing it with the music. It was really that I had never heard of any of these songs before, like Mojo Workin' and Big Boss Man, and of course all the jazz standards. I hadn't heard of any of those. So for me, it was just great to go. Now I've probably been to 250 open jams, so now I'm starting to hear all these songs over at Thrill Is Gone. Like, I mean, I hadn't heard of any of those songs. And so that was really cool for me to come out and hear you guys do that. So my question about jams is that, like, it's funny I feel it's kind of two different things going on with if somebody were to make the quote of what can we do to make the jams better, there's kind of the jammers angle of what the jammers could do in a general sense, and then to me there's sort of like what house bands could do to make their jam run better. So with the jammers, would you, one of the most frustrating things for me, and now especially since I've been to like 200 of these things, is that it is a little bit frustrating when you do get up there and a guy is really bad. Not the guys that sort of can solo, they can chord, and they're sort of looking up the end of songs. They can logistically do it. We're talking about the guys like, below them. That probably shouldn't be on stage.
That probably shouldn't be on stage. Do you think there should be like a baseline of ability before you get up on a stage?
Yes, and you should be able to get through a song. But also, really when guys are really at that perfunctory of a level, usually we get them up one song and they're so miserable by the end of it and just flustered that they've had enough by one song, most of them. They're not going to get mad if you get somebody else next. Up next. So
you're saying the jammer will police themselves sometimes.
They can. Sometimes people have a fairly entitled attitude, and which is fairly frustrating. And and really honestly, I mean, as far as music, I'm a lifer. This is all I do. It's all I've done for a million years.
Pick me.
And it's you too, and it's what I plan on doing the rest of my life, which means I'll probably have to work up until lunch on the day of my funeral. There will be no retirement, but so but even if somebody's not a good musician, they might be really good at their profession, right? They might be a plumber, might be a doctor. So just because I'm a lifer doesn't mean I'm going to look down at them, man. I'm going to go, you know what? This guy's got a whole story I don't know about. So even if he's terrible, as long as he's being nice, I'm going to be completely respectful to him and handle him like I would like to be handled in that situation.
That's a great point, man. That's a great point.
And really, a guy that I've really learned a lot about that kind of stuff from is Dave, because he is really not ever quick to say anything in anger. He kind of watches what's going on, then he talks. You know what I mean? And
he's not impulsive in that sense.
yeah. And he's kind of like he's kind of like Marcus Allen, like Marcus Allen, to let the guys hit each other, and and then I tend to be more like Natron Means, my shirt's untucked, my nose is running, and so what I've learned from Dave is hey, maybe not say nothing right now, maybe not say anything right now, and stop,
What would be the benefits of that? Maybe a lot.
Yeah. Anytime I've ever done that, I've never gone, boy, I wish I'd have told that guy what a schlep I thought he was.
Yeah.
That's never happened. Usually I'm like, I sure glad I didn't say anything.
Yeah. You're always, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, and I agree with that, because it's definitely frustrating when you get up on there and when they have a person there, but that's really the key, and that's kind of where I'm at about understanding about that whole dynamic of when that happens, because there's then getting to the house band, you have I'm trying to figure out what the responsibility of the house band is in that scenario, and so there's because I come from teaching world, and I understand that you can't fix all your students. There's some that they're just going to be what they are, but the teacher does have quite a bit of control over what's happening right now, more than they think they do, or not control, but more impact than they think they do. And so we're not going to mention his name, but I know you know who I'm talking about, keyboard player in town who comes to the jams a lot, and he's one of those guys that talent-wise totally is good enough to get on stage, but he'll play ditties in between songs, right? A little bit of goober, a little bit, and I think a lot of people don't really love him so much, but he has a moment where he comes to the jams, takes 4 hours to set his stuff up, right? And then he accidentally stays up on stage the whole night.
Yeah.
And I know you know who I'm talking about. Let's not say his name for a night.
And that could be a number of people, yeah.
Yeah, it could be a number. He's an example of one person. And so my thing with that moment is that this is my opinion. I think one of the two reasons why nobody ever calls him out is, I think the one reason is that that a lot of band guys want people to come back to their shows. It's not just him. It's like anybody, these 50 people in town, or 25, 10 people in town that we really, that are kind of making your guys' jam worse.
Yeah.
They get up there and it is not, they're not making it worse. I think that's one of the things, to make sure that we're not just being turds to every single jammer and we want them to come back. But I wonder if you could speak a little bit on the whole idea of, I wonder if people just don't like conflict, like if they are annoyed at the jammer, but they're just hesitant to ever say anything to anybody because of how the other guy's going to react. See, that's like psychological stuff that I find fascinating. What do you think about that?
Well, the level of expectation for a jam and for a regular gig where you're paying somebody, two different movies.
Yeah.
Like if you watch like Lions when they play with their cubs and stuff, they're easy on them. If it's another adult line, it's you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So my level of expectation and at what juncture you're going to get the look from me.
Stink eye.
Yeah, the stink eye.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to say something to you, corrective. Like, hey, can you do that different? But even in a professional thing, man, it's always just to be gentle as you can, man. Just get rid of all the, conflicty kind of stuff, and just do the, hey, can you play that different next time? And most of the time, people are like, sure, and they do it, and it's no big deal. But if you're all like, can you? Like that, then they're all defensive, you know what I mean? And so, but at a jam though, and the particular person you're talking about, I've asked that guy to do stuff. He just looks at me and stomps his foot at me and does it again anyway. And I'm like, and however, the guy is a personal friend, so I'm like, whatever, dude. It's like kicking a puppy at that juncture. You know what I mean? So, so I try not to let things that those guys are doing bother me too much, because it's a jam. You know what I mean? There's going to be some loosey goosey stuff. And with people that, are so bad they tend to run people off. You know, one thing I would say is really the jammers don't really foot the bill for the band. You know, they're not really, you know, eating the dinners and buying the drinks and stuff. It's people that are sitting there watching the jam go on. So if it descends into some kind of, you know, hodgepodge of junk, man, you know, people are going to leave, you know, and it doesn't financially support itself.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, but, you know, we don't want those guys to not have a good time or anything like that. And we're really blessed that most of the guys that come to our, and gals that come to our jam, can kind of play.
I agree. The quality of your jam. I mean, we've all been to. I'm speaking on jams in general, I guess, but yours is decent. You know, you get decent players at your jam, and there's other ones in town that are not around anymore, and there's kind of a little bit of a reason for that. You know, the house band is pretty average, and they don't really know what they're doing in regards to running the jam, and then they end up attracting kind of the other jammers that sometimes don't necessarily deserve to be there either. Like they're quite not ready to be up on stage, and I find it really funny that because we've all been there. All of us have had our first jam, right? And we've all been at a point where we were not at all where we wanted to be musically, you know. So there's a patience level there with anybody like yourself who's a veteran and knows what they're doing. But then I have the other hand where, not to the jammers, but to this bar owner right now, this is a show.
Yeah.
You know.
So even if you're a jammer, it is still a show. There's people watching you. There's other musicians watching you, but there's people that are patrons that are watching you, and you need to not run them out of there, or you're not going to have a jam to go to.
I would argue that that's what you and I think. I think there's other people that don't view it that way, and that frustrates me.
They view it as their personal band practice sometimes.
And
honestly,
only happy fun time.
Yeah,
you know?
and really, we don't get a lot of guys that are like that. We're really blessed in that, and I'm not sure why that is, because I've been to other jams where it just after the host band it just descended into you know. And we're really blessed. We've got a lot of guys who want to come out and play with us that are friends and stuff like that, and people we don't know yet, you know, that they, well, I heard this is a good place, and we've had, you know, people contact us, Dave and Danny and I, say, hey, you know, my son wants to come out, he wants to get into the Kansas City music scene, and then all of a sudden that guy's gigging and he's too busy to come to jams. Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished.
Why not,
that's great.
You know,
that's the goal.
Yeah, that is the goal.
Yeah.
And, you know, we want them to come back, of course, but we want them to get plugged in, and we want our jams to be a benefit to people, and they're a benefit to us financially and musically, you know. So we really enjoy seeing people progress and get more comfortable and they get gigs. They're in a band and stuff, and you know, I get excited for them. I'm like, oh, you're in a band now? That's awesome, you know. And then they'll have their band drama.
I saw you when you were
and you know, my first
3 years old. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out my first jam. When I was 19, my bass teacher, Ted Ward, who was a great teacher, great bass player, still is, and really a litmus test on how to give lessons and stuff. I thought, because his attitude was great. He could laugh and joke with me, and we still got a ton of work done.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? He always pulled a lot out of me.
That's great.
And when I was 19, I started going and see the Casey Blues Band at what is now the Riot Room. It was the Hurricane.
Yeah.
And that was a Monday night jam, and it was kind of a who's who, man. And you know, I remember I'm 19, I shouldn't even be in a bar, you know. And my first lesson with Ted, he had me doing stuff with my thumb like this, crazy stuff. And he goes, now, Paul, do you want to get up and play a couple of shovels? I'm like, no. I was scared. I knew enough to be scared, you know.
Yeah.
And really, those are the guys you want to encourage to get up. They know enough to be scared. Guys that are completely clueless and are terrible, they have no idea what they're getting into.
Yeah.
And so, but my first jams were really, I'd go sit down with the Casey Bottoms Band, which was a related band. It was the same organist, singer guy, Larry Van Loon. And there'd be times I'd have terrible experiences, man, you know, but you learn from them. They're humiliating, you know, not because people were terrible to you, but just because, wow, I should know that song.
Yeah.
Or why don't I know that kind of?
We've all had those nights where you know, you're like, oh my gosh, B flat blues. How come I can't play this tonight?
Yeah, and
know,
also most of the songs at jams, they're not just one-off songs, they're templates of songs.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
why don't I know Stormy Monday? That's a template.
Yeah.
Not only is it a slow blues, but it's a template
Yeah.
of slow blues.
Yeah.
You know, so but you make mental notes, and with YouTube now you can look stuff up, see how does that really go. You look up a couple different versions and find the one that matches the one that you failed on, and you know, and my jam experiences pale to some of the professional experiences that I've had that were so embarrassing that I couldn't sleep for a year. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, and really, and that's because, you know, as musicians, it's not just something we do; it's who we are.
Yeah,
you know
it's identity.
I mean? And I was watching that movie Whiplash. You know, have you seen that movie? It's about this super, you know, high-profile studio college jazz band, and the guy's just merciless on those guys. And my friend Scotty McBee, who's the best musician
I'm
I
having
know.
him on here in a couple
And
weeks.
yeah, he's don't tell anybody, but he's the best musician I know. And of course, anybody that knows me will like say that. Yeah, he is the best musician. Paul knows. You know, but we were talking about that, how just brutal he was to that guy. But then there's that part he goes, yeah, but if I see where he's coming from, man. If I just try harder, you know what I mean. And when I went to Musicians Institute, all the teachers there had gotten there because of their, you know, their playing career, right? Not because they're teaching them. And there was like urban tales, urban myths, and just storied legends of almost superhuman playing prowess. You know, like of Howard Roberts being dead asleep in a session, and somebody smacks him on the arm, wakes him up on the countdown, and he reads this super complicated chart and nails it. You know, guys like that, and every
Freaks of nature, pretty much.
Yeah, and they all had that kind of prowess, man. And you go, you know what? Maybe I got that too. Maybe I should try harder. You know, and I tell people that are less experienced, you know, because they're like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. And I'm like, yeah, the only difference between me and you is I've been embarrassed a lot more than you. You know, and had to recover from it. You know? And
been knocked down more.
I've gotten knocked down more, man. I've got knocked down hard. You know, and I've been, you know, and I've been like, you know, I've been knocked down and counted all the way down to 10. Everybody thought I was out, and I had to get back up. You know what I mean? And so.
So last question on the jams that kind of relates to a little bit of what you just talked about with cluelessness. And that's, I think, maybe what annoys me the most, I guess, is when the jammers are 100% clueless. And that's maybe better than what, and you were talking about where they have this kind of ego trip, and so they're up on stage and they think they're something else, right? They think they're just awesome, you know, and then everybody in the room kind of is not clueless and understands that, like, man, you know, you can't play a shuffle and you're at a blues jam or so, whatever they feel. And then I think, like, what I was trying to get at before is that, like, I think one of the reasons why people try to avoid that conversation, even if you say it as nicely as you can, you know, like I would think that somebody like yourself or Dave or somebody like that in town who's very well respected by the other musicians, obviously a good player, could come up to, like, especially a younger person, like in their 20s, and be like, man, I'm so glad that you came out to our jam, you know, that was really cool that you got up there. And let's say when you were on the bandstand, you, like, called out a shuffle, and the guy was like, shuffles, let's do a funk, you know. And so then you can kind of use that on them a little bit, where you're not judging them anymore. You literally are judging what they literally told you. Hey man, I was noticing that, you know, we're wondering about doing a shuffle. Usually at this jam we play like 40% shuffles, you know, or 50% shuffles. What would be really cool is, you know, I think you would have a lot better time here if you were, you know, maybe went home and looked at a shuffle a little bit, because I think you'd be able to play pretty much most of our songs. If you worded it to them like that, instead of, you know, you suck, never come back, blah, blah, you know, if you're just mean to them, do you think that a lot of musicians have a hard time accepting criticism?
Yes, and here's the thing, you know,
This is a people thing
Yeah,
too.
it's a
lot of
people thing.
people.
And we don't ever tell people, hey, you suck, don't come back. So we're never like that. You know, if somebody's really clueless, they don't understand why we're getting them down after one or two songs, they'll be getting like, they'll get all mad, they'll be flipping us off, and I'm never coming back here. You know, and I'm just like, you know what?
Yeah.
It's okay. You know what I mean? You know, I'm not even gonna get, and I can't even get riled up about that, man. You know.
Oh, whoops, he never came back. Oh.
Well, yeah, we're just like, you know what? This guy doesn't understand. I'm not gonna get mad.
So would you want to take 2 minutes if obviously he's screaming and yelling and this is done, you know, this conversation's over, but if he's sort of a little bit frustrated, would you want to go kind of explain for
absolutely,
10,
man.
20 seconds?
Totally, yeah. And we like, you know, like, I mean, we like giving like constructive criticism, like, hey, on this next time, try doing it like this, right? And we'll tell them stuff while they're playing, like turn down or do that kind of stuff, because we got, you know, it's not in their best interest to let them play at the wrong volume. You know what I mean? They have to learn how to do that, and it helps them in the long run. So if you really care, you got to tell people, you know. And as a musician, like, who wants to hear something that they don't want to hear anyway? You know, and you know, but if you're going to hear something you don't want to hear, would you rather hear it in a nice way, or would you rather hear it by somebody that is drunk with whiskey on their breath, screaming at you about it, with kind of screaming about something else anyway, and you have to decipher what they're saying because you really want to learn, you know. So so we always try to be, you know, personally, I would hate myself if I was mean to somebody on the jam. I'd really have a problem with myself, you know. So
I definitely wanted to talk about that today because obviously that's a huge just people world problem right now of people hearing criticism. But I think, like, for instance, you know, I don't want to get off on politics, but in politics, it is just known that you just criticize. I mean, you hear it hear it every 5 seconds of somebody. You need to be this, and I think with lessons, especially at school, there's a culture of I just do whatever my teacher says, period. Like when I was at college, all of us never argued with our teacher. Whatever piece you want to throw at me, whatever you're telling me, I just okay, you know, and I do it. But when you're dealing with a lot of non-trained musicians, even in other bands, especially when you're dealing with it in a band setting where you have guys that now aren't jammers and they are adults and they are professionals, you know, and so now you're, especially for somebody like myself that's like 35, now I'm talking down to like a 6-year-old or a 60-year-old, you know, trying to tell them that, well, you know, even though I'm supposed to, you know, I'm supposed to respect my elders and stuff, you know, you're playing over everybody all day, you know, and you know, so that's tough when you have something that you want to get across to somebody. But
well, if you have to say stuff like that, if you're not emotional about it, people will kind of just go, oh, okay. If you're all like emotional about it, then they'll have that kind of defensive response. But if you just tell them what they need to hear, like it's, you know, like having ice cream or something, you know. Have you had vanilla ice cream? Yes, I have. There you go. You know, if you make a big deal out of it, then they're going to be hurt. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I just try, and I know Dave is like this too. Just try not to never get upset. Man. There's just no point in it, man. You know,
and you know that for you, this is your jam, but it's not personal in the sense that if somebody else did the exact same thing, you would feel the exact same way, or tell the same person the same thing. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Hey, watch for the endings of songs, and then the other guy does it. You're like, hey, dude, watch for the endings of songs. Yeah. You know, so you know what I mean? Like, it's not personal in that sense.
Most people you say stuff to are really appreciative of it. You know, they're like, man,
you'd hope so. Yeah, you'd hope so.
And I've had people that have really come up and risen to the ranks and go, yeah, my first jam I was ever at, you were in the host band. And my first thought was like, God, I hope I was being nice that day. God, I hope I was nice to that guy or that girl, you know? Yeah.
So good. So enough about that. So the other thing I wanted to ask you a little bit that I think is really interesting, and another kind of frustration of mine when I'm in bands, is kind of, I'm fascinated by the roles of each instrument and what their purpose in the band is, and what, like, not like playing wise, what they should be doing. Like, what is their role? So explain to me what the role of the bass is in a band, or the rhythm section.
Well, the role of the bass is to make it sound low and in the right key, you know, and And really, really, I'm kind of joking, but it's
Yeah.
true. But really, your job is to make the band sound as good as it can possibly sound. People go, man, that's such an awesome band. You're doing the job as their bass player, as the bass player. If people go, man, that bass, I don't know about the band, but that bass player is awesome. That means you're either too loud, you're playing too much stuff.
Oh.
You're not doing your job. You're not really serving the band. And a lot of playing bass is, it's just mule work, man. You're just, boop, 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 and the correct way to do that is, like, if you're going to do some solo, have it come out of nowhere and people didn't even think you had it in you. And if you're playing a style of music, if people think you play only that style, you're doing that style right. You know what I mean? If you're doing it so good, they're like, what? He can play jazz? I never saw that coming.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished, man. But people see you playing and they go, oh, I can tell he's really this. I can tell he's playing rock, but I can tell he's really a funk player.
Yeah.
You're not doing it right, man.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because that happens a lot with blues, I think, where blues is so freaking malleable in different, or it's so manipulated in so many different genres, especially like country and rock, for example, where you can definitely tell this is not really a country player, right? This is a blues guy who's playing Folsom Prison today. He's not a country guy, he's a blues guy. And like, talk about, like, I always use the analogy of like the linemen in football, right? Where it's like if they don't do their job, this crap goes bad, really bad. But when they do their job, nobody cares. Is that?
It's like being the janitor at the high school.
Yes.
Nobody notices the janitor until the toilet's plugged up. And that's part of it, man. But the people you're playing with, they know and they appreciate it.
Oh yeah.
And they appreciate it. And I know for myself, if Paul is on his game and knows what's going on, things just go better.
Things just go super smooth.
And if Paul is not on his game and doesn't know what's going on, maybe it's not going to go as well. But I mean, it just seems like that the bass it lays down a lot of groundwork for other things to happen well. And a lot of playing bass is getting, you got feel and timing and all that stuff, but getting the right sound for what you're doing. You need to sound right for the band you're playing with. Do you have an audible tone? Is it still moving air, but it's audible? Can you still hear the kick drum? Is it not clashing with the guitars? And it's kind of a bummer because a lot of really playable basses aren't worth a darn for cutting through guitars, and are even worse for cutting through electric pianos. So,
because basically all the other instruments can cut through really well, right? And bass is so everybody always feels the bass, but the really cut through clear sound that you're talking about, where it's not too boomy, right?
And a lot of bass players play with too much low end live. They get an active bass and they just walk over and crank the EQ on their bass, and then they're like, I can't hear myself, and everybody else is getting mowed over by their sound. It's a matter of like, and it varies from band to band and room to room. If it's a real
Lou Allen's is definitely a very interesting room. I mean, it's a special kind of room that you've got to kind of manipulate your, especially bass, I'm sure.
That is one of the few rooms where I actually I have to have a bass with a bridge pickup. I use a precision bass a lot, but and Llewellyn's, I can't use a P bass because I can't hear what I'm doing unless I'm playing right out by the bridge, and then I'm like, well, why am I doing that? So there's issues of timbre, and with Llewellyn's, that's one of the few places I actually favor my bridge pickup, because I got to get that buck, 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 I gotta get that twang and stuff. Because even if it's not that low endy on stage, it'll be low endy. It'll be plenty low endy.
It rings all over the place in that room.
And so, but if your low end is even a hair too thick, you turn into the invisible bass player. You're like Paul Samuel Smith from the Yardbirds. He was a guy that had this great, like, lush tone. He'd come up and whoop, 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 like that, all of a sudden Clapton and those guys launch in and he's invisible for the rest of the song. Even though he laid down a beautiful foundation, you can't hear him anymore. And
isn't that funny? Like, you're so loud, but you still can't hear yourself.
Right? Or that's really nobody else can hear you, but they can feel this sickening low end coming from you. And I thought when I was younger, and it was a thing that kind of mystified me, because I remember having a really good rig and a good bass, and sometimes I could get a sound, sometimes I couldn't, you know. And I'd see these guys, older guys, on stuff I thought was junk, and they were getting a sound and having a good time. And I was like, man, I don't even deserve to have this good year if I can't do any better than this. But also I remember being younger and thinking, boy, it'd be easier to play bass in a funk band than it would be to play bass in a band like Molly Hatchet, where there's like a bunch of guitars, and you've got to get a sound that cuts through. That's simple, not too simple, but it's ingeniously simple, and it's complicated where it needs to be complicated, and that takes a lot of thought. And you know, also, and it's not a very glamorous thing to sling your bass down kind of low and maybe bend down like a guitar player, because that's what the guitar player is doing on that riff. Most bass players that can really play, they want to cross their legs and sit with their beret and their cigarette with the cigarette holder and play, you know, play fretless all day, you know. And you know what, in the real world, man, that tone does not work on songs that have singing, okay? And I think it's really easy to be way too technical of a bass player to ever be in a good band, you know? And just like drummers, you know, or anybody really, I guess, but especially as a rhythm section instrument, you've got to be really able to get simple, but simple like a genius.
Yes.
You know, and one of my favorite bass players for that is the guy that played for Al Jarreau, Freddie Washington. That guy is who I want to be when I grow up, man. He's a sight reading machine. He's a binkety banking phenom. He's awesome, but then he can underplay. Like a genius. You know, he plays like he wrote the song.
Oh yeah. See, I love that, because like that's like I said, that's the other thing that I get frustrated by, not just knowing the role of like what you're doing, but knowing. I'll say this probably many times throughout this you know, this series of shows, is that I think that like knowing when to play is what makes you sound really, really great, you know. And that's I think the thing that for drummers and bass players, that probably is the thing that annoys me the most. Obviously, when the timing is just, you know, ridiculous, that's obviously annoying. But when you have, like, let's say you've got like a 4-piece, right? You've got bass, drums, guitar, and like maybe a violin or something. I don't know if you agree with this, but I think in a smaller setting like that with only like a 4-piece, I think drums and bass have quite a bit of room there to do some fills and stuff. But as soon as you get up to the 7-8-piece band, do drummers and bass players need to be filling every 5 seconds?
No, and also even, you know, as a bass player, the bigger the band is, the larger your lead-in tones are. You're less chromatically, and you get more big band, where you're playing like whole steps and minor thirds for lead-in tones. And you know, another really good example of a bass player in a band is country. You know, and a lot of guys are like, "Oh, country," you know. And people don't know, man. If you're gonna play that stuff good, you gotta be a pretty tasteful musician, you know. And country, you know, it's a very literal locking up with the kick drum, you know, which I don't like to do all the time. I got better things to think of than just the kick drum, you know.
You got better things to do with your life? Yeah,
well, because it's a repetitive pattern that happens over a 2-measure, you know, period, and so I'm thinking about the song, man, you know. But anyway, with country music, you have to be exactly locked in with every time the kick drum kicks, you kick, you know. And other kinds of music like R&B, the kick drum can kick, and you don't have to kick with it. You don't have to play with every or like Latin music, particularly Brazilian, it's interlocking. You know, like the kick drum might go like that, and you're just going bink bink bink. You know, you're playing over. You're laying a rhythm over that rhythm, and but with country, your lead-in tones are so important. If you go boop, 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 there's your note like that, you know. Even if you go do, 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 even if you end up on the right spot on beat 1, if you didn't do the right lead-in tones, it makes sense to take the other player's ear to that. You're going to get the look. They're going to go like that. It's not like it's just, and it's a knee-jerk reaction. They almost can't help it. And, you know, if I make a mistake like that and nobody looks at me, I go, apparently I'm not playing loud enough, or my tone's not punchy. You know, I just got a mulligan on that because my tone was too mushy. But so your job is to like really understand the form of the song and do things to make, and if there's singing involved, your job is to do things to make the singer want to sing. And if
so your job is to help the singer, and you're not the most important thing. What a concept!
Yeah, and really, and I've told my students this and other younger guys, and they do look askance at me, but there is so much to be said for cross training in music, meaning that I think it's good as a bass player if you learn how to sing. You start going, you know, when I sing this song, I'm playing about a third as many notes as when I'm not singing it. Maybe somebody is listening to what I am playing and counting on me to be at a certain place at a certain time, and I need to be thinking of that. So a lot of times if you see me play, if I'm looking right at the singer, that means I'm paying attention, man. I'm thinking about the singer, you know? And so, you know, is for me, like, and I will never be as good a singer as I am a bass player. I haven't put the effort into it. I don't have as good. I can't go to the music store and drop $4 or $5 grand on a cool voice. You know, you got the one. You know, if you have a Fender Squier Affinity Series voice, that's what you're stuck with. You make the most of it. You know, and you can do a lot with that sometimes.
Yeah.
But I have found though, like the better I get at singing, the more I am a good accompanist for people that do sing. Because I'm thinking about what's gonna, maybe I should get dropped down here and create a hole for the vocals, and make that person relax and get into this intimate moment of music, you know. And a lot of guys look askance at me for that, and I'm like, dude, it's like totally true, man. It's been true for me.
Yeah.
You know.
So the last thing on bass playing specifically, I always thought that that some guys with country, for example, it seems like it's really, really easy, like you were talking about, especially technically, like the technique of it with like that and jazz is not even close, right? I mean, you can't even argue with that. It's just, you know, you can play country as a younger kid, you can't play jazz as a younger kid, you know, I mean, you gotta have some years under your belt and stuff, but with country, I always felt that like, what's hard about it is kind of the discipline of it, in the sense that you've got to just like stay there.
Yeah.
And this always reminds me of like the second grade boys that I teach. They might be able to actually do some like sort of kind of intricate playing stuff. What they can't do is stand still for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This little kid, they have to be up moving around, and they can't sit still. And that's the thing we need them to do most, like at school or something. And so when you've got like a bass player or a drummer, they can't. I mean, some guys, like their brain will not let them boom, 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 but not for like 4 seconds, like the whole song. You know, they literally can't. Like their brain, they can't handle that. That's my opinion. I think that's why it's so hard, especially for maybe like people like you and I, who we have the ability to do all these crazy fills and all this technical stuff, and to sit there and do the equivalent of like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, it feels like we can't handle it, you know, because we want to do something, but that's not what the song needs right now. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Exactly. It takes a lot more musical horsepower to play the right thing for that moment, and be thinking ahead at what's going on, than to indulge yourself in what's happening in just that second. You have to be in the moment and thinking ahead.
Yes.
And you were talking about jazz, and I've played a lot of jazz. I've studied jazz a lot, and the biggest thing I got out of jazz is the compositional skills. You know, the understanding of composition, because that's the only genre where you get those standards. You get real snapshots of actual major and minor key centers. You know, blues, regular blues,
there's one.
It's like what's all dominant seventh chords, and that's a whole different movie.
Yeah.
You know, and then with rock, there's so much ambiguous tonality. There's no sevenths, there's no thirds. You know, and you know, in blues it's a minor seven, but with kind of a bent third. You know what I mean? It's neither fish nor fowl, and the fact that all the 1, 4, and the 5 are all dominant seventh, that throws out the whole modal thing out the window. And with jazz, you know, the whole ability to understand how major and minor key centers work, and pivot chords getting into modulating into different keys, and also
the 2/5s into whatever, and then the 2/5 into whatever, 2/5 into
and also as a bass player, that's the only music I found where you have to actually you have to know how to walk from a major 7th chord to a major 7th chord to a dominant to a minor, or the minor 7. You
it's
know,
no joke, right?
Yeah, a minor 7 flat 5 to a dominant flat 9. You know, all that stuff, and also you don't have to repeat yourself. You're expected to not repeat yourself as a bass player in jazz.
Yeah.
And also you don't have to start on the root note on beat 1 of
every
the
single
chord. And if you do that in any other style, that means you're a terrible musician. In jazz, it's just jazz because it's not as concrete, right? And also, I found that if most of playing bass well is your ability to think and hear fast, okay? And if you can solo over those standards and make something comprehensible out of them, you can probably pick up a song on the fly, a country song or a blues song or a rock song, because you've heard it before, or somebody's sitting there going, you know. And I remember getting my gig at the General's Inn. I think it was 25, and I would go on nights where I got off. It was 3 5-set nights and 3 7-set nights. On the nights where I got off earlier, I would go up to Marcy's where my friend John Rittenauer was the bass player and band leader, and I would go learn all the old stuff with those guys. And they had a guy that he had all the spaghetti western sounds on his guitar. This guy Lonnie Harper, and he played like this. And he couldn't read a note of music, you know, but when he was doing sessions in Nashville, people just would play the song for him real quick. He had a mind like a steel trap, and he would get it the first time. But he played like this, and these guys knew all the old country songs. And John would stand at the back of the bar and go, you know, and so I would have it for my house gig.
It was an airport, you know.
Yeah, and you know, like Rocky Top or Apartment Number 9 and stuff that, you know. And at that time there wasn't YouTube available, so it was good, good like on the spot learning for me. So, but with the jazz stuff, it's made me to where I understand weak beats and strong beats harmonically, and how I can play stuff that isn't in the key center, but when to play it and where to play it and how to use it, you know. And also with jazz, you know, like most of the time if you do a bass solo, everybody drops out, and if you hit a major 7th or a flat 9 against the 1 chord, you're like the tree that fell in the forest and nobody was there to hear it, right? You know, because nobody has any frame of reference. But in jazz, they actually comp behind you, and you can get a lot more creative. You don't have to just go straight up into bankety bank mode or hit a toe bomb and get all fuzzy. You can actually play some melodies. And guys that are really experienced soloists, they play in jazz. They play melodies that are so good, they should be a song.
Yeah.
And my last teacher I had was Monty Musa, and he's a guitar player. And we would go do gigs together and stuff. And I was there, and I still don't believe it. We'd be playing at Jardine's or someplace like that, and he was so good at like zeroing in on what the people were doing. He knew exactly how barbecue to be or how chromatic and how ethereal. And he would play a solo that was so melodic that people would either clap or they would stand up and clap. Like almost every time. I mean, I was there and I don't believe it.
Yeah,
you know?
some bass solos just are, you know, like just, you know, yay me kind of stuff. But then there's some guys like that are playing straight up good melodies, and you're like, holy crap.
Well, and I got to a point years ago where I could sight read standards and solo over it, just sight reading it, you know, boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, like that. That's easy. But doing something that is a melody, creating melodies on the fly like that, that's a lot of mental horsepower.
Yeah, that's
you got to put on your big boy pants. You know, so yeah.
So last thing on that is you were, you know, unfortunately back to the open jams with jazz specifically, that when you don't hit that one, right? So you're doing this huge swing piece, and you're walking like crazy, you know, the whole time. You can accidentally not necessarily hit the one on every single measure, and everybody like doesn't flinch at all, right?
But in that genre, it sounds good.
It does sound good, but I think that one of the things is that you're not, like, this always drives me nuts when you play, like, when you're doing like a boom chuck, and then somebody decides to do a train instead, right? You know, to me, that's the same freaking beat. You know, the tempo is exactly the same, and that does not screw me up one bit when a guy does boom chuckle right into a train, at all. Like it screws me up literally zero, and I think part of the reason why it sounds good, and not just that the bass playing sounds good in jazz, I think it's because the players are such good listeners that you do one little thing and that doesn't screw them up.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
Well, I agree, but also when you're in that kind of mindset, you know, you're thinking a lot quicker in jazz than you do in other styles of music, and so you know when somebody plays the 3 or the 6 against the 1, it's like, yeah, that's fine, man, or the 4 against the 2, it's fine, but it sounds weird if you do that in another style.
Oh yeah.
If you come in on the 3rd instead of the 1 on the bass on another style, it sounds bad.
Yeah.
It does not sound good to me. And what I've noticed, though, you can sneak that stuff in other styles, but it has to be just a different color of inside.
Yeah.
It's not outside. You're not trying to be outside. Sometimes you want to sound outside, but a real effective way of doing that kind of specialty kind of stuff, like superimposing a Mixolydian mode over something that that shouldn't really have it, but it works. Or a Lydian mode, I should say, is it just sounds just like a different color of inside. You know what I mean? And that's in particular like on jazz, like torchy ballads, man. You know, if you do some kind of diminished arpeggio, if you do it right, it doesn't sound like Ellie Mae Clampett going down the stairs or out to the cement pond to play with the critters. It doesn't sound like a bloop 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 bloop. You know, it sounds like just a different texture of inside. The guys that are really good, like Monty, that do that kind of stuff, and Dave does that stuff too.
Dave definitely does that on some not minor stuff, but maybe some bluesy stuff, and he'll throw that like Arabian chord kind of stuff. I can't think of what mode he's doing, but yeah, he'll do that too, and it sounds great. It sounds really appropriate for.
It just sounds like a continuation of what he's doing, and even in blues stuff. Stevie Ray Vaughan, when he came along, like in the '80s, I think he saved the blues. Okay, and I mean, here's a blues guy, and he's on MTV. Okay, but also got all those baby boomers and young white kids back into listening to blues and stuff. But his rhythm section kind of changed the game in that, it's a 3-piece band. He's soloing for 15 minutes. You can't do the exact same thing over and over again. So they're doing different things. They're following his train of thought. They're doing different things that are also making him think of different things.
Yeah.
And
I talked about that with my buddy last night, how that's what's so cool is that like this was the example I made the other time, is when you're doing like a slow blues and then the bass starts to do that walk and the drummer goes with him, and now all of a sudden you've kicked this slow blues up into a and all of a sudden the solo's different. So like you're helping him think of it, you're helping the soloist go somewhere else, right? Like, and everybody's like, why was that so cool? Well, that's because the bass did a walk. That's because the bass, it's not the soloist really, that's because the bass did something totally different there,
Absolutely, and it just, the soloist might be doing a lot of the same things, but you change the thing underneath them that they're soloing to, and that kind of makes it sound different too.
Sure, yeah. So I got just a couple more here, a couple more quick ones. What was something in a previous band, like thinking about the running of bands and stuff that didn't work, like in a band you were in?
If you don't understand your role, that needs to be really clear. Like, are you the band leader? Are you a band member, or are you a side man? And your role as a side man is to be, yes sir.
Yes.
And as a band member, you've got skin in the game. You've got interest in everything. And then as a band leader, your job is to lead. And if the guys are mad at you sometimes, so be it, man. You've got to wear the pants. Somebody's got to be the boss of the band in every single band. And it can't be a democracy. It has to be a benevolent dictatorship at best. And there's been times had temporarily gotten confused on what the role was. You know, am I a band member?
Which one you were, or which one another person was.
Yeah, and once you get that hashed out, though, things run a lot smoother.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's a good answer. I know my band has talked a lot about that and how sometimes we talked about this last session with my bass player last night, that sometimes it's not terrible if you want to talk about like the idea of leaders or followers. You know, followers is a negative word, but you've got to have somebody run the band, like you just said, and sometimes it's not completely bad to not have 5 leaders. You know, because that's when you start.
And really, as a leader, if your band members aren't playing well in that context, that's your fault. And I think one of the best band leaders of all times is Miles Davis.
Mm-hmm.
He was the king of. Hey,
legendary.
Rob, I saw you at your gig. Okay, I like how you play. I want you to come in the studio and play in this template I'm going to give you. Be Rob in this template. And he did that so good that all those guys became stars in their own right.
Every one of them, right?
And how many times did he redefine jazz doing that?
Yeah.
And that guy,
he was really good at going, okay, I have this sound. You would be terrible for this, but you would be really good for that. You know, he was like, I want you to do you, like you just said, in this, because you're going to sound really good over there. And he just had a mind there to know, like, everybody's ability level, not just being good or not, but, like, literally what their specific ability level was, right?
Yeah. And really, you know, as a band leader, you want guys that kind of know what you're going to play next. You know, and I know as a side man or as a side man, if I kind of know what that guy's going to play next, that means I'm on the right track. I'm inside his head.
Yeah.
You know, and you want to feel like you're pushing in the same direction as the band leader. You know, that you're really on board and you're 100%. And if it's music, and also I would also say if it's music that you don't like, you probably shouldn't play it. You know, and I've had a couple of times where people approach me about stuff, and I listen to their stuff. I go, you know what, it's really good for what it is, but I don't like that stuff. You should not hire me. You should hire me as somebody that's a fan of that music. And I'm not detracting from there certain styles that you like. When I started playing country, I did not love country music.
Right, me neither. But I grew into it.
You know, but then I grew to love it as I understood how it worked, and I found the heart and soul of it. You know, and I think it's important to whatever style of music you're playing. You need to really find the heart and soul of it and make that resonate in you. It needs to be something that resonates in you so that you're not just playing the gig, you're a protector of that music. And I think a lot of people are really bad about, especially if they've got a lot of ability, they kind of can just wing it so much that they never learn the stuff. You know, to the detriment of, and I've seen bands where guys couldn't pull off a 3-chord song if they didn't rehearse it. But their band was great. They had a great concept, and they worked really hard at it, and they ended up It's like you know, in certain junctures, you know, Beethoven passed up Mozart, and that, you know, Mozart was such a natural. He could be on a date at a restaurant, scribble some stuff on a napkin, and you know.
And it's all time great music.
Do it. You know, add a couple of dippity doos later on when he got home, and he's done. You know, and Beethoven did not have that much ability. He had tons of ability, right? I mean, but you know, Mozart had even more. But Beethoven had to try a lot harder, and he had to torture himself with it, man. And so he came up with some really beautiful stuff that kind of hits you more at a gut level.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. Beethoven is
one
of my favorites for sure.
I mean, of course, his ability level was unbelievable. I mean, you know, he was deaf as opposed to a certain juncture. I could still remember what everything sounded like and write music.
Right?
So.
Yeah. So like a couple more here. What advice? So what I'm talking about here is like the 20-year-old-ish people that are just starting to kind of gig, or just not kids, but you know, 20-year-olds that are just getting into this gigging stuff. What advice would you have for them?
I would say learn the music, understand your role, be punctual, be easy to work with, have a good attitude, look people straight in the eye. You know, say thank you. You know, because you know the running joke is, how do you get a musician to complain? Give them a gig.
Give them a gig.
You know?
I love that line.
And,
how do they complain? Give them a gig.
People that I've met that really make a lot of money playing music, they've got like stone cold killer abilities, right? But also, they're really easy to work with, and they're easy to get along with. And whatever gig they're on, they treat that gig like it's the most important thing they've ever done. They bring their A game to every gig, and that's something that I've tried to aspire to. Whatever gig I'm on, you know, I'm going to do my best. You know.
How come you just mentioned 5 non-musical things? Isn't that interesting? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that's what I always find hilarious with my students is that most of the time, it's not about the person's playing. It's about like their mind and their psychology and I mean so what do you say? Show up on time, right? Be in a good attitude. Say yes or no, sir, right?
Say thank you and also
thank you.
Focus.
Focus. You know?
Yeah. Because I think most musicians are people that, you know, I mean, personally, I didn't do well in school. I couldn't pay attention. I didn't go. You know, I didn't go to school, you know, very much, you know. So I went more when I had to pay for it in college. I did a lot better at paying attention when I had some skin in the game. But also, you know, really, you know, there's the things that you learn in college about playing music, and those are invaluable training. But then there's your real life gig skills that come in. And you know, you might be able to play circles around somebody else, but if that guy's got the sound and the feel that's perfect for that music, you know, that's the guy. And a friend of mine told me years ago, he said, hey, don't be looking down your nose at those older guys that are working more than you, okay? You need to look at them and make use of what they're doing, you know? Isn't that a valuable tidbit?
That's pretty awesome. I think on that line, I was probably right at the beginning of college. I tried to have kind of my nose up in the air about, oh man, this original music and jazz, oh, this is the stuff, all you other people playing that country blues, whatever, you know, all the covers, all the, you know, and then I was thinking later on, I'm like, wait a second, this guy does improv, you know, he's improvising, doing solos and stuff in his songs, and he's playing a bunch of cover tunes, and I'm kind of laughing at him, but this guy knows like 300 songs. His catalog is monstrous, right? I mean, and I'm like, why am I dogging this guy? He's got more songs than I do. You know, maybe if his soloing ability isn't up to this other person, this guy can barely go play in a band because all he can do is really solo. He doesn't have real songs in his head.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of respect for some of those other guys, like a lot of the random guys playing in cover type bands in town, you know, they're really good musicians. They have like 300 songs they know, and they can throw it. Dave's one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, he has you know, pick a funk song. All right, this one, boom, and he just starts it, you know, and like he's just ready to go all the time. And I think that's like, that's pretty valuable, right?
And there's also a job skill set of playing in cover bands where I was doing a contemporary worship gig a few years ago where the guy that was the guitar player was a ferocious jazz player, right? And he did a good job. You know, he also had some cover band experience. One of the other guys in the band was just a jazz player, and it was a real challenge for him to get these 6-minute, you know, borderline Nickelback-esque forms in their the same 3 chords but jumbled up. Here you lay out, here you come in, and so. Those guys that play in a lot of cover bands, they have the ability to boil down the essence of those songs, get rid of the superfluous production, boil down the essence of the song, retain the essence of the song, and be able to call it. If you call it up, they just scroll it back up in their head and they're right in that moment.
Yep.
And guys that are great studio players have that 15-fold, right? They can go right back to that moment of music and remember exactly what they played and what to overdub, you know. And so there's and there's some of these Opry shows which are, you know, they get less and less every year as that crowd dies off. I mean, that's a crowd that's been dying off since, you know, since Hank Sr. died. You know, so the fact that it's still around is amazing. But those guys will have to learn 30 songs every week for a different artist that comes in, and they show up. Most of them don't even have charts. They're just, they got it.
That's what kills me about country, and we'll finish up here, but that's what kills me about country is that, like, one of the things is that all the songs do sound the same, but there's a 1-5-4 intro, and then this next song is the exact same, and it's a 1-4-1 intro, right? And then in this song you have this tiny 1-5-1 turnaround, and then this other song doesn't. It's the same song without a turnaround in the middle. It's all barely different. It's the same freaking song, right? I mean, you get a bunch of like waltzes, right? And they're all the same song, you know. I mean, really, you know, but they're so barely different, and that's like a skill to learn, to remember those forms of all those songs.
Yeah.
I mean, I just that blew me away when I joined my first country band. How hard it was. To me, I think it would be easier to memorize a 3-hour complicated jazz. Like for me, it's easier to remember complicated songs than like 6 of the exact same song that are barely different. I don't know if that is for you, but it you know, it's kind of a weird thing. I mean, is it harder for you to remember a whole bunch of them that are barely different from each other and easy?
Yes.
Or is it easier to do the hard stuff? Or
the hard stuff is almost easier because there's so many things to latch onto to remember.
Yes.
And the stuff that's like very similar, the key to memorize those effectively is be able to call out the essence of the song. And then you remember, oh, it does a quick 2-5 there because the words do this.
Yes.
And then it fits into this over here, and then later on it does the long 2-5 because they're going into this. And that's a big part of the song. You understand it. Then you'll remember it every time. But if you're going, is this the song that does the one thing? And nope, wrong, you know.
Yeah. So I just thought that was always really funny. So last question here. I know when musicians talk to each other, they always there's always some story that everybody has, you know, because talking to other musicians is hilarious. I don't know if you've had I mean, you've played hundreds of gigs, I'm sure. I mean, you have something that comes to mind that was kind of a ridiculous night that you'll kind of never forget, or
there's so many of those that, you know, that obviously real life is so much stranger than fiction. That, you know, there's guys that mistimed their drinking and drugging and they fell out on the gig. And you have guys that are dead asleep with their head on the piano, you know, that kind of stuff. Most of the time, the stories involve like really crazy stuff happening in front of you. You know? And I used to play, Danny Montero and I used to play a gig called the Monroe Inn. And we did it with Gino Bueno and Bobby Zahner, Loose Change. And Bobby Carson was the guitar player. And we would be playing down there, and they probably should have had chicken wire there, but the only thing that saved us was they really loved the band. Because we would do like a country song, we'd do a funk song, we'd do Nirvana, we'd really changed it up good. And Gino was really good at that. He's a people person. And but there was 2 or 3 times that the police came in there, guns drawn, chasing people, zigzagging through the bars. We're going boom, boom, boom. Boom, literally like this. We're like, hands up, okay? And then we have to go back to playing, you know. That happened a couple of 3 times down there. They chase people. They chase a perp, zigzagging through the bar, in one door and out the other. With their flashlights, guns drawn, and everything. And literally we had to put our hands up in the middle of playing. Yeah. That really did happen.
That's funny, dude. Like, oh my gosh.
Or you see some guy get in trouble with years ago I was playing in a band where the guy was he was seeing multiple girls, and they all showed up one night at the same gig, and they're sitting in a booth across from us, and they're looking over him, arguing with each other and pointing at him, and he had pretty self-medicated pretty heavily at that juncture already, so he was in no way or shape or form ready to deal with what was getting ready to go down, man. And I can't remember what he did, but I was like, oh, I am so glad I'm not that guy. Because I'm watching it going, I'm like, ew.
3 of your ladies show up at the same bar.
It was a real bad night for him, man. I was like, man, ooh.
That's funny, dude. Yeah, that's funny, man. So yeah, talking about a bunch of stuff. Anything else you got, man?
No, thank you so much for having me, Rob. I really appreciate it. It's an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Like I said, we're trying to get a bunch of different people on that have something to say, and we didn't really get a chance much to talk. Maybe if I bring you on again, we can talk a little bit more about teaching. We didn't really talk too much about that. We said a little bit, I guess, but yeah, man, we're trying to get guitar players, country guys, jazz guys, teachers, anybody on here. Theater people, whoever, and talking about some stuff that I hope people would find interesting. So, I think that's pretty much it. Music Talk, Paul Greenlease. Check us out next time.